receive a link to a recording with the slides and the audio in the next couple days. Throughout the discussion, we encourage you to type your questions in the Q&A panel within the section, not the chat section, but the Q&A panel that you'll see here. And we'll try to get to them throughout the presentation. And certainly for those questions that we cannot get to, we'll answer those after the presentation individually. I'd also like to point out the short survey that will launch at the conclusion of the webinar. Your input's very important to us. We'd appreciate your feedback, and if you can participate in the survey, that would be great. You'll be entered in a drawing to win one or two $50 Visa gift cards. So please do that when you have a chance. Without further ado here, with a little short introduction about today's presentation and presenters, we have joining us some industry experts. John Poulsen has more than 40 years of experience in marine engineering, surveying, consulting, claims, and loss prevention. He's held various leadership roles for the coordination and oversight of global marine surveying, consulting operations, quality control, and dispute resolution. Also joining us is Glenn Walker. He's a master mariner and marine surveyor with over 25 years dedicated to the U.S. merchant marine and yachting industry for commercial, government, and private vessels. His expertise encompasses project and personnel management, crew mentoring, and vessel operations. I just want to thank Charles Taylor, Marine Technical Services, for loaning Glenn and John to us today. They're one of the best cargo surveyors out there. We really enjoy working with them, so we're glad to have both Glenn and John in today's discussion. Also joining us is Dr. Cindy Garbrecht with over 28 years of insurance industry experience. Cindy is Vice President, Claims Administrator for Roanoke Claim Services, specializing in cargo insurance claims and marketing. Cindy's trusted with claims handling and payment authority on behalf of Munich Re Syndicate, and she's completed her master's degree in international management in 2010, and she's currently pursuing her doctorate in management. Lastly, my name is Rick Bridges, Vice President, Client Development at Roanoke, and I'll be your moderator for today's event. I've been with Roanoke for 23 years, and I've also have the privilege of acting as member at large to the Air Forwarders Association Board of Directors. So without any further delay, please join me in welcoming John, Glenn, and Cindy, and we're going to jump right in. Okay, so let's set the stage here.
Hey, Rick, excuse me. Rick,
yes.
Sorry, this is Teresa. Sorry to jump in.
Okay.
Are you sharing your presentation? It hasn't launched.
Okay, let me try it again here.
Thank you.
Okay, how's that, everybody?
We're good now. Thank you.
Okay. So let's just set the stage. Everyone knows why we're here, but after a series of large vessel disasters, including Yantian Express in 2019, One Apis, December 2020, Maersk Essen in this January, and a few others, since then, we've had over 3,000 containers go overboard, significant cargo loss to the containers that are still on board those vessels, with losses over $1 billion in revenue. Obviously, severe disruptions in supply chains, and shippers are looking for answers. So in this webinar, we're going to demystify general average. We're going to talk about the broader supply challenges of ocean cargo and the issues that we're seeing with heavy weather damage and delays. Okay, so really we have, I think, to a large degree, some challenges of scale. I want to make sure we talk about some of the economy versus performance, and then risk aggregation on these vessels. It really seems the root cause, as of late, has been vessel size. And while carriers try to achieve economies of scale, they fail to consider the practical concerns of aggregating a considerable amount of cargo on any one vessel. John and Glenn, I think, see this firsthand. They see it as surveyors, but they've also seen it as master mariners. So John and Glenn, if you can maybe speak a little bit to your views as seafarers in the advent of mega vessels, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Rick.
You're welcome.
I'm actually an engineer. I don't mind being called a master mariner, but you know, I think we all understand the economies of scale being sought to reduce unit costs, but scaling up doesn't always work. And I can refer to my engineering background when same approach has been taken to getting more power from engines without contingencies. What looks good on paper doesn't always translate. So the ships have got much bigger, but it seems clear that the lashing and security technologies have just not kept up, and in some respects have deteriorated. For example, the discontinuation of bridge pieces connecting one stack of containers to another to produce individual stacks instead of a block is done to allow quicker handling, and the vast majority of lashing techniques are all designed to improve turnaround time. Now, I think Glenn would agree that basically with the height of stacks now at least 8 high, combined with a breadth of 23 to 24 containers, the accelerations experienced by these containers in heavy weather has greatly increased. The accelerations in the top tiers has greatly increased, which translates into increased forces on the supporting containers lower in the stack with a serious potential for overloading. And once one container buckles in a stack, you're in trouble. Also, the hull forms on these ships produces an overhang at the aft end of the ship, which in heavy weather can give you a negative G effect. In other words, the top containers can become weightless and try and leave the twist locks and the stack. On top of which, we find defective twist locks, worn container sockets, and another element is, given the size of these ships now, the crew can only check tension in turnbuckles lower in any stack during the voyage, which leaves everything else basically unchecked. Major problem is misdeclared weights of individual containers. It's a major problem, coupled with the fact that the stowage, the effectiveness of the stowage inside the containers is an unknown quantity. So if something breaks loose in a container, it can do damage from the inside and with similar results. We've seen the fires on these large vessels, and the effect of fires in containers is containing dangerous cargoes is greatly exacerbated by incorrect positioning of these boxes within a stack where they are completely inaccessible for any sort of firefighting efforts, boundary cooling, and that sort of thing. And this again can be caused by misdeclaration of the contents and not being declared as dangerous cargoes. We'll talk about it later, but one issue we have is following an incident, following the return of a vessel to port or a port of refuge, access for surveyors representing cargo interests can be very frustrating and leads to a delay in determining what's happened in these cases. Glenn, anything else?
Great.
No, John, I think you hit the nail on the head there and covered everything. And as we get along here, we'll see that the access to these vessels and the terminals by surveyors is limited. But is key to solving the problem.
Yeah, thank you both. And it seems like really it's an issue of multiple individual problems really aggregating to become a bigger problem. We'll talk a little bit more about the details of that. Why don't we shift over to really the components of general average and talk about what general average is. Cindy, do you want to take this? You're on mute.
Sorry about that.
There we go. It's okay.
The technical definition is that the law of general average is a principle of maritime law whereby all stakeholders in the transit proportionately share any losses resulting from the voluntary sacrifice of part of the ship or part of the cargo to save the whole. So for example, if the crew of a vessel had to discard some of the cargo overboard to lighten the ship in a storm, the loss of those containers overboard would then be shared proportionally by both the carrier and the cargo owners. So the codification, or legal code, if you will, of general average is really defined by the York Antwerp rules in the 2016 version. Those rules have been in place since 1890 and have been updated many times over the years. The US accepted those rules in 1949, and the rules detail the process to be followed in order to declare a general average. So three of the elements that you would need in order to declare it would be: one, the sacrifice must be extraordinary, and any damages from the sacrifice is also considered in the general average cost. Number two, there must be a peril to the ship's voyage. The carrier has to determine that the peril is valid. And three, actions. Actions resulting in general average must be the common safety of all, the vessel, the crew, and the shippers, not just for the safety of part of one. Typically, it's the carrier that actually declares the general average, and there's some rules that they have to follow as far as sacrifice. What does a sacrifice mean? So some examples, if we want to go to the next one, is for sacrifices is jettison of cargo, loss or damage by sacrifice for the common safety, extinguishing fire on shipboard, cutting away wreck, voluntary stranding, damage to machinery and boilers, cargo, ship's materials and stores used for fuel, damage to cargo in discharging, and loss of freight. And the interesting thing is that the York rules have two sections, and each section has a different purpose. The first section has the rules that are identified by letters, such as Rule A, Rule B, etc. And those rules give the general guidelines on what can be included in a general average. The second section has rules that are identified by numbers, such as Rule 1, Rule 2. These rules give specific situations, sacrifices, and expenditures that can be included in the general average. Just to give you some perspective regarding general average, statistically worldwide, the estimate is that general average is called approximately 500 to 550 times per year. That's more than one a day. Most of us really only hear about a very few of them at best. So I think that number might be quite surprising to some.
That's amazing, Cindy.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, I don't think that most of us are really aware of how many there are until, the only time we're aware of GEA is when we get a claim for one.
Exactly.
Some of the expenses and costs that are included, aside from the sacrifices, one party might have to spend more money in the common interest of saving the ship and the cargo. So again, as defined in the York rules, the expenditures also can be included in the general average. And some examples of those expenses are salvage expense, port of refusal expense, wages of master and crew during the extension period because of the port of refusal, fuel during the extension because of the port of refusal, towing costs, and environmental costs.
Great.
Elaborate a little bit on each one of those. The salvage costs, when we think of salvage, we typically think of simple things like, the saving of the destruction or damage of goods, or the collection or discard of refused material. But in the terms of marine salvage, the salvage costs are the rescue of the cargo or ship from danger, the compensation paid to those who are saving the vessel or the cargo, such as your salvors, and the ship or cargo rescued, and the restoration of a sunken vessel or cargoes by divers. Years ago, I think we all could attest, if you've been in this industry for many years, you'll know that the salvage costs, we understand, were a necessary part of general average, but we really didn't pay much attention to those costs because they didn't really seem to amount to much. Today, not so much. Salvage is still a very important priority today, but it's a little bit different now, and the reasons being for several reasons. And a couple of those: increased water traffic, the costs being charged by third-party vendors to perform those salvage duties, just to name a couple things. They, excuse me, there also appears to be fewer large salvage companies out there, and they seem to be charging a lot of money for what they do. And so those costs then become a part of the general average. And it's those costs that are impacting general average the most today. Those costs can range anywhere from 10% to as much as 80 to 100%, depending upon the GA circumstances.
Yeah, let's try and quantify that, Cindy. John has given us a gift here of this picture on the slide here of this vessel. John, can you just give us some rough costs on the salvage costs, tow costs, etc. on this vessel?
As I recall, Rick, this one in total, I believe between salvage, which was firefighting, which actually saved the cargo in this vessel. The vessel itself was a constructive total loss under the hull and machinery policy. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, total of salvage expenses, towage, etc., came to about 8 million.
Wow. Yeah, that's significant.
Just to touch on the salvage issue that Cindy just brought up, there are fewer salvors, and salvors, one of the explanations for increasing costs is that they are not always maintaining their own equipment. And a lot of the time they have to subcontract to get equipment, which obviously bumps up expenses for everybody. And that's been a trend for a while. Salvors will tell you that they can't afford to maintain a whole raft of equipment when there are fewer salvage cases out there.
Well, the other thing to think about before we go on to the all parties of responsibility, there's two things. One, those expenses are aside from what the actual GA expenses are, the value of the cargo and the vessel. So just think about that. That's on top of. Okay, and then also a thing to remember is environmental costs. Unless it's cleanup, they're not actually part of or recoverable under the general average. Pollution is not a recoverable thing. So those are things to remember when you're thinking of expenses.
Good to know. So Cindy, why don't we carry on with the thought process here of the responsibilities? How do those responsibilities get parceled out in a general average?
Well, as we have said so far, general average is an event whereby all parties are sharing in the inevitable loss. So each party, the cargo owner, the freight forwarder, and the carrier all have responsibilities in the course of GA. One of the things that a cargo owner or shipper can do to help themselves is to secure cargo insurance to protect themselves against the general average. If they insure those shipments, those claims are usually resolved by their shipper, and the cost and the stress of handling the claim are borne by the insurer. By comparison, owners without insurance are required to make a deposit out of their pocket before receiving their cargo. So it's important to understand that the obligation to pay a general average attaches to the cargo and not to the contract of carriage. So the responsibility to pay the contribution is that of the cargo owner and not the intermediary, even if the freight forwarder actually made the booking or the contract of carriage with the actual carrier. And as the word intermediary suggests, the freight forwarder is the middleman. He's the transactional guy. So they're there to help with the alerting the cargo owner of the general average, as well as aiding in the movement of released cargo, but it is not their responsibility to post contributions. The carrier, on the other hand, has a legal duty then to protect the interests of the cargo owners who have incurred the sacrifice or loss in transit, and they are to look to the other cargo owners as well as themselves for contributions.
Great, thank you. We're going to shift back to the cargo side of things here and talk about cargo handling. I think Glenn and John can certainly talk to some of these details and really the challenges of handling a mega vessel post-incident at the port. Glenn or John, do you want to jump in?
Glenn?
Sure. One of the bigger problems is that these ports, as we've all seen, are already stressed with just business as normal. We've seen the stack up of ships on the West Coast. So when these incidents take place, trying to find a port of refuge that can handle a incident of this magnitude are hard to come by, as you can imagine, because every place is fairly busy. And typically the equipment involved in sort of dismantling these containers that have collapsed on deck is not in every port. You need equipment like floating cranes, large shoreside cranes. You need the berth space. You need the container laydown space to take the damaged containers off the ship. You also need the ability to cross stuff the damaged containers. You need to be able to handle the disposing of trash that happens with these. So these ports of refuge are very sort of specialized in a sense, and they're hard to come by. The standard container ship unloads about 25 containers an hour with one crane. To unload these ships that have been involved in these incidents take about 15 containers per day. It takes months, as we'll see as we go along here, to sort these accidents out.
Amazing.
When you see the some of the later slides, you'll understand, given the wreckage, that one of the reasons for the slow discharge is a safety issue. It needs personnel on board to help discharge the damaged containers, and it is a real serious safety issue to do that.
Imagine. So, but behind the scenes, we hear, I think of similar frustration to what shippers see as well. Big complaint being radio silence from the carrier, lack of updates. I think Glenn and John, your comments to the time that it takes just to assess damage, to get to the containers, very much the reason for this radio silence. They don't have ready updates because the throughput has been significantly diminished. How can arranging surveys, getting boots on the ground, help give the shipper and the forwarder more intelligence to the situation?
I'll kick off with this, and Glenn can follow up, but it's communication with the carrier, through the agent, through whoever we need to go through to get access is key to letting shippers know what is the status of their cargo. Is it damaged? Can it continue in the container it's in? Does it need to be restuffed in a new container, and then its contents are safe to forward, or is it missing? Is it lost? But without access, we can't do any of that firsthand, and we can't rely on people to tell us, because we are acting on behalf of our instructing principles. We need to get, as Glenn calls it, boots on the ground. But without the cooperation of the ship owner, the carrier, we won't even get into the gate at a terminal. And that's the main thing, is just being there to observe. And that we have to communicate that to these people and let them know that we're just there to observe. We need to.
Sounds like improvement can be made there.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Glenn, you've made even comments too that some of your team have had to camp out outside of a port with binoculars.
Yes,
we kind of check the output of containers.
We've had cases where we've sent surveyors to some U.S. ports with the intent to get on board the vessel or get into the terminal, been denied, and literally had, binoculars out to look up on the ship to say to the cargo owner, hey, at least your container's on board. The container doesn't look damaged. But again, as we found, and that the boots on the ground, getting there is key, and as John mentioned, though, our hands are somewhat tied by the terminal and the vessel owner. But if we can get there, we can typically at least start to communicate and hopefully start to search for the, or the status of the cargo.
Yeah, sounds like it's money well spent.
We've
Definitely.
also considered using drones, but one interested party recently got severely reprimanded by the carrier for that and was told to destroy any footage.
Yeah, I can imagine they have security concerns and things like that. But
yeah,
hopefully with added technology, we can get more transparency somehow. All right. Well, we're going to shift back to the mechanics of handling the general average claim itself. Talk about the process of setting up a general average. Typically, to carry out the settlement, the steamship line is going to hold all the freight. They're not releasing freight until they get paid. I think that's kind of a known amongst all of us that have been in the industry. The carrier always gets paid, and with the general average, the same thought process is true. So to determine that cost that the shipper is going to have to pay, or the insurance company is going to have to pay into the general average, the voyage value has to be determined. That's going to be the value of the vessel plus all of the freight on board. That in and of itself can be a laborious task. You can imagine trying to catch all of those commercial invoices, shared boxes with individual shippers on board. That is a rather large process. Once that's done, the participation is determined. So that's the individual participation of a cargo owner and the percentage that they must put forth towards getting their freight released. And the loss amount is determined. Both these factors, these numbers, are moving targets. The loss amount is an estimate, very much so at the beginning. There's going to be changes to that amount as more damage might be uncovered. It could, in very rare cases, be overestimates. But in any case, those amounts are going to be significant to establishing the general average. Once that's done, the participation percentage is then applied to the loss amount to determine that security deposit that the individual shipper or their insurance company must put forth before the steamship line releases cargo. We do have a question that has come in on this particular topic. Do you advocate the appointment of a surveyor to act in the general interest, and would John's company take this role? So we would certainly advocate surveyors to help provide pressure to get the intelligence on container release, container condition. In some cases, insurance is going to pay for some survey costs of damaged cargo, but up until that time, those survey costs would be borne by the shipper, and I think it's money well spent. Cargo damage is only part of the financial loss to the shipper, and I think a lot can be determined through having a surveyor on site, getting that information up front to help minimize that loss, help maintain relationships with ultimately the buyer of the product, and that sort of thing. Charles Taylor is a group that could certainly do that. If the need occurs, we can certainly direct any customers to them to do that. So, Cindy, do you want to add any more to the general mechanics here of how the actual general average is set up?
No, because I think as we go forward, we're going to explain a little bit more about what's, right now is the shipper's obligations for cargo release.
Mhm.
As we talked about earlier, there are documents that are required to be submitted to the average adjuster in order for the container or the cargo to be released from the vessel. So the list, this is a short list, but it's average bond and the average guarantee and cash deposit. So just to kind of, detail those a little bit, the average bond is typically completed by the cargo owner and signed whether you have insurance or not. In the case of an uninsured person, this document is important for your submission. It's a document that we would also collect in the insured case, but for insured cargo owners, the bond form is just sent along with the average guarantee, which is the form that the insurance company completes for you, letting the average adjuster know that the insurance is agreeing to pay contribution for your cargo. So along with these documents are also the average adjuster is going to require copies of the master bill of lading and any house bills and a commercial invoice. So you're going to ask, well, why do I need to supply these? The bill of lading is required because it supports your cargo or your container was actually on that vessel. So they need something to support that. The commercial invoice, on the other hand, then supports the actual value of the cargo. So that's used to factor the actual GA costs.
Okay. We did have another question come in. We have containers on Maersk Essen. Does this mean that every company that had freight on board, regardless of whether their container went overboard, had their cargo held until every shipper paid a portion of the GA? And honestly, with all of these vessel incidents, I can't keep straight who's declared general average, who hasn't. Cindy, has Essen been a GA formally?
No,
No, not yet. But let's just,
none of the weather related, and we'll get into
that's
that
what I
later.
thought.
None of them
Gotcha.
have filed GA at this point.
Okay. I think, and just to answer this question, if in this type of incident there was a general average declared, the answer to the question is yes. So all of those cargo owners whose cargo is unaffected would have to post a general average guarantee and bond, or if uninsured, would have to post cash to get cargo released. A lot of folks, I think, forget that a bill of lading is essentially a contract. It's a contract between shipper and carrier, freight forwarder and NVO in between. But that contract is non-negotiable once it is perfected. And GA, general average, is defined within that contract. So that's really what every shipper is bound to.
And I know a lot of them are asking about the one APIS. No GA has been declared, so no general average there.
Yeah, okay. So what to expect post-GA with cargo insurance? The good news is cargo insurance, whether it is all risk insurance or even very limited FP, think kind of total loss only coverage, that's going to respond, and the insurance company is going to take care of the general average. Now, what's critical here is making sure that you've aligned yourself with a insurance broker and insurance company that can handle a general average efficiently. Plenty of cargo insurance companies and brokers that have not necessarily had the experience with a general average claim, and it can be kind of difficult navigating that because it can create delays. And the last thing you want to do is have cargo that's already been delayed held up just by paperwork and the inability to process the general average paperwork. So a little bit of a selling point, I think, for all the freight forwarders that are joining us, that are clients of Roanoke, that, certainly we have the experience in handling those general average situations. We are setting up watch files very early on to manage those and to make sure that the paperwork process does not slow the release of freight. So what to expect if your cargo is not insured? Well, that's a different process altogether. The steamship line is going to expect the same out of you than they would expect from the insurance company, that you are promising to pay any future charges that you were going to pay the estimate through payment in cash for your participation. And again, your cargo is not getting released until you do that. Handling that process as a layman can be very difficult. Also consider that some of these general average claims, they don't finalize for 2 or 3 years. So you are obligated to be a part of that, to post additional funds if there are additional demands that are made. And it can be a significant task for any individual within that company. So it is an issue. I think really the best advice I can give to forwarders in this perspective is just to make sure that your shippers know that general average does occur, that shipping via ocean is not always going to be perfect, and that those that are uninsured really need to think twice about insuring their freight, even for incidents like this. A lot of shippers don't realize that when they ship via ocean, they themselves have a liability to the steamship line for general average. Okay. So just a quick example here on the participation, what it's going to cost a shipper. This is a vessel that incurred significant fire on board in 2019. The participation rate, it was about 50%. Again, a moving target, but if your cargo is $100,000, you as a shipper, you'd have to pay $50,000 just to get your cargo released in that instance. Some practical considerations for freight forwarders on uninsured freight. Who's going to pay the general average demand if that participation amount is 50% or higher? Really what I'm trying to say here is the shipper going to walk away from the cargo, and are you going to be the one who is now assuming those freight charges to the steamship line? So it becomes a receivables issue. And I think it's important to really segregate those customers that are knowingly uninsured. They're saying, no, we're not going to buy insurance, and put them in a different hopper, if you will, as far as receivables risk. Make sure that management is aware that they represent a potential for financial loss to the forwarder or the NVO in that instance. Again, the reminder here, the carrier will always get paid. So if the shipper isn't going to pay, the carrier is going to find a way to get paid through the NVO forwarder, through the NVO bond potentially. So those are just some considerations. Okay, managing expectations here on what the forwarder can do to assist the shipper pre and post general average. As I mentioned, creating maximum transparency to the potential for a general average, to the potential for heavy weather losses, to the delays that might be incurred post heavy weather loss, cargo getting tied up at a port for 2 months, making sure that everyone is aware of that. I think the practical considerations of managing the document process, the freight forwarder can assist with greatly and help manage that process quickly and efficiently, and then assist in communications. Again, there's frustration with radio silence from the carriers, but I think as long as there's open dialogue, that shippers certainly do appreciate that. Cindy, anything you wanted to add to that?
I think communication is the biggest thing in the general average process. So freight forwarders, stay in contact with cargo owners, giving them and apprising them of any information that they learn as they go along. I think that goes a long ways with cargo owners because they're anticipating their cargo, they're not getting it, and so they're sitting out there waiting. So any kind of information that you can give them and help them is beneficial.
Super, thanks. Just as a follow-up to this, what can the shipper really do to manage the exposure? I've always promoted really contingency planning on every shipment. So the shipper needs to look at any individual shipment and say, what is the financial loss to our company if this shipment is lost overboard, if it's damaged, if it's stuck for 2 months, what is it going to cost us, not just for the cargo itself, but for any relationships that we have with buyers? You know, could be peak season that you're moving cargo in, things like that. Notify your cargo insurance provider early on. Set up a claims watch, even if the cargo may not be damaged. There could be a potential for it. Let them know. Get those documents in line to be handed over very early. And I'd say notify your buyers downstream that there's a delay, even though you don't know the expected time that that cargo might be released or delivered. Keep an open dialogue there. And I think long term, you know, we've been talking about this in the industry for a while. It's really, I think, time to insert a little bit more pressure, engage industry groups, Federal Maritime Commission. You know, they want to hear about just shipper experiences here. Engage other organizations to really help create more transparency to the issue. That radio silence, I think, is an area that can be improved to help shippers better negotiate their relationships with their buyers. Okay, the big issue here is delay. It's not just the cargo damage, it's that delay, the frustration, the financial costs of cargo sitting either on board that affected vessel or at the port once that cargo is discharged. Again, you know, you don't get a lot of information from the carriers. So what can we get out of the surveyors? A little bit of a review here, but John and Glenn, is there anything you want to add here?
Again, I think we go back to what we said earlier about the time it takes to establish what's damaged, what's lost, what needs to go into a new container for on shipping. And you can't argue, even if you've got access, you can't argue with the safety aspect of handling some of these collapses. It'll take time, months in some cases. We'll see later how long it's taking.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about ocean shipping, you know, taking days to move cargo over oceans, but loading vessels, last minute changes, missed sailings, things like that. I can certainly appreciate the fact that it creates a lot of logistical challenges for the steamship lines. So load plans might not be accurate. Vessel loading and container positions might not be perfect. Can you talk real quickly to just kind of the issues that come out of that when you're trying to locate cargo on board that vessel?
No, sure. I mean, you know, some of the, you know, especially in the case of a fire, you have containers that lose all identification, and it really comes down to a point of we have to open up the container and you know, try to identify the cargo. You'll see a lot of shippers put paperwork inside containers or tape them to doors even that have been a huge lead in trying to figure out whose cargo it is. You know, you have cases of as you say, the load plan is not exactly 100% accurate, and we tend to, you know, it takes them a long time to figure out it. I mean, these are thousands of containers that are involved in this, and to try to get a handle on the exact location of your container, did your container go over the side, it takes time to rectify this and identify it, and to get a status on damaged or lost, or what's it going to take to put cross stuff your container and get it back on a ship and get it to you.
Good information. Let's take a little bit deeper dive kind of in the practical challenges of managing a mega vessel. I just put up here a slide with a few points. You know, really, I think the practical applications of getting containers inspected. with the crew number that has not changed as vessels have grown, 10,000, 20,000 containers. I mentioned here some possible failure points. John and Glenn, do you want to speak to these?
I think the first 1, 2, 3, and possibly the last one pertain to what I said at the outset, that the ship's sizes have increased, but the technology when it comes to dealing with the forces involved generated in heavy weather, for example, by the size of these stoves, the technology has not kept up, and that's something that really needs to be looked at. I'm sure it is being looked at by the IMO and everybody that can contribute to that. Just to touch on what you said earlier, I'm speaking to masters on board ships of this size. The plan as presented by the shore terminal is given to the master and the crew. They take a look at it, and then the boxes fly off and the boxes fly back on. And when they're finished loading, masters have told me that based on the stability computer on board, the stow isn't what they said it was, ashore, for sure. And again, this comes to misdeclared weights and location of containers in the stow, both things.
So a significant margin of error.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, what we have in front of us here, even though we've been talking with general average, is a lot of weather-related events. Some significant issues here causing these issues. We're going to just kind of breeze through, I think, in the interest of time, some of the current issues. Cindy, do you want to take us through what we have here, starting with 1 APIS?
Certainly. Just so everybody's aware, in the last 5 months, we've seen approximately 7 to 8 incidents where it's been heavy weather and containers have fallen over. On the average, the industry says that they lose about 2,600 to 3,000 containers a year. We've lost that and more in the last few months. So the situation with the 1 APIS is just really unprecedented because they had this damage. They came into the port in December the 7th, and they've been unloading ever since, and they're still in the course of unloading. And it's very hard for everyone to understand, well, why can't I get my container? How do I know what's going on with my container? And we've seen that radio silence with the carrier. Some of the information that has been coming out hasn't actually really been, very adequate or true. So what I do know is no GA has been called to date. The hope is that they're going to have all of the containers unloaded by the end of the month, which is this Sunday. What they're doing is repairing the ship as they're in the course of unloading, and they're taking containers to an undisclosed location to prep them for reshipment to Long Beach in about mid-March. That's pretty much, what we see. Any containers that have come off that have been damaged, our surveyors are given about 2 hours time. If they can see it, they see it. If they don't see it, they're not going to get another chance to see it until it gets to the US. So it's really been kind of frustrating, not only for cargo owners, but for the insurer as well, because we can't get any information and there's nothing we can do. We can't tell you if your container is missing. We can't tell you if your container is damaged because we're not privy to that information as of yet. And even if you go to their website and check, the information changes every time you check to something that doesn't make any sense. So this one is a real, head scratcher, and I wish we could do something, but 14,000 containers is a lot of containers to have to get through. So in a way, I almost wish they would have called a GA. It might have been easier for everyone, but that didn't happen. So the one Aguila is a sister ship. Same thing happened. a few less containers fell off, only about 100 or more. And that one ended up in, I believe, Portland, and it was unloaded. We only saw a couple of things from there, but it didn't
Cindy?
really.
Yep. Yeah, it was in Washington State. Charles Taylor attended there, and later in California on this one, appointed by attorneys for cargo underwriters.
Okay.
There wasn't as much damage to to this one, so.
No.
Same with the Alba. We haven't seen much of that, but that was a fire, not necessarily weather related. So, and they didn't call it a general average. The Saroja
Okay.
Lima, another weather related in the Caribbean. That one is now on its way, and it's actually on its way to Australia, and goods are already being shipped to destination. The
Okay.
Essen is one of the newer ones, 13,000 containers. That one is in Mexico. It was diverted there, but it's now estimated to arrive in LA on the 25th. So if you have containers there, you might check. And then the last one is the newest one that just happened this week, which is the Maersk Eindhoven. And this one is still too new. It's on its way to Yokohama, Japan, and where they're going to assess the damages there. But it's said to about 260 containers went overboard, and about 65 containers are damaged.
Okay, great. So in historical terms, a voyage was called an adventure. And I argue that in as much as it might have been an adventure with knife in mouth, climbing the rigging on a ship, it's still very much an adventure today. A little bit different, but still not without risk. We were talking about some mechanical issues, engine breakdown, that sort of thing. John, can you speak to how engine failure, steerage issues, things like that really can translate into either heavy weather losses or general average?
The effect of an engine room fire, for example, or just a loss of propulsion through mechanical means will greatly exacerbate what we've discussed previously when it comes to stresses on container stowage. The effect of losing propulsion is for a vessel to drift what we say is beam on into a sea, which greatly increases the rolling period, the rolling degree, accelerates all of the loads, increases all of the loads on what we've discussed previously, and is a something to be avoided at all costs.
Good to know. Great. Well, it looks like we did a pretty good job keeping on schedule. We kind of were a few minutes over. We do have a couple questions, but I think to kind of, wrap this all into a neat little package here. We all see the issue. We understand it. I think really the best advice is maintaining maximum transparency to shippers, to customers of those shippers. Forwarders, I think, have an opportunity to get closer to an account by talking about these issues. I've always said your individual audience might only be the traffic manager or that department. And there's so many other people within a company whose lifeblood depends on their supply chain that are affected by these incidents. The C-suite, risk management, sales department, all of those individual silos, if you will, I think have an interest in these issues. And if you can bring that exposure to the perils of shipping via ocean, I think it makes for a much better relationship with that customer. Granted, there's challenges just to get in front of people, especially in this day and age. to talk about it. But it's that maximum transparency that I think can help yield a better relationship when the inevitable event does occur. So I think some advice there. And from a shipper perspective, you know, I think for so long it's easy to use the single metric of freight rates to determine who you're going to put your freight with. But you know, inserting other KPIs like performance and quality and things like that eventually, I think, create a much better experience for your own customers. So I think looking at these issues, it's certainly worthwhile bringing in that as a measure in your freight choices. So we have a few questions. John, Cindy, and Glenn, I'm going to throw a few of these out here. Just kind of, if we can get some quick answers. If we can't get to your questions, certainly we will make every attempt at answering them individually. So I'm a cargo owner whose cargo is lost in a GA. What is my incentive to pay my share? I can take this one real quick. Well, if you don't pay your share, you're not going to get your freight. If you abandoned your freight, you're probably going to be sued by someone who you owe freight charges to. So can you abandon it completely and walk away without any kind of penalty? Short answer is no. Cindy, do you want to add to that?
No, I agree. I mean, it's no different if you had an accident and left your car on the side of the road. It's gonna follow you. So you get sued. Somebody's gonna come after you for what you owe. So abandoning the freight is not an answer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is the one APIS vessel considered a GA claim? Not yet. Or it could be, but I think the longer this goes on, probably the less likely it would. Would you agree with that, Cindy?
Yeah, I do. I know a lot of people think that GAs happen like right away, but
Yeah.
I've had instances where GA has been called 6-8 months after the fact. So it's never over till it's over, but it's looking more and more like that they're probably not going to call it. Maybe the damages to the vessel are not as extensive as maybe they had thought. So no GA.
So if no GA is announced, then essentially would the customer just pay the ocean freight and the container can be released?
Well, we don't know when the thing's going to be released. That's the problem.
Right.
So
Yeah.
wait until we find out when that's going to happen. And that's probably not going to happen until we know it gets to Long Beach. So when that happens,
Yeah.
yes, you're going to have to pay the freight.
Okay. Super. All right. Okay. Another question, are we obligated to pay the, excuse me, let me just find that one here again. Are we obligated to pay the collect ocean freight charges at this time? For example, cargo on the one APIS. So freight charges would still be due, even though you're waiting for your freight. I hope that answers the question. Another question here, are shippers not required to present a weight cert for each container? They are. Glenn and John, do you want to speak to kind of the inaccuracies might be present?
No, sure. I mean, you know, it's a chronic problem. It has been for years. I think it's been tightened up quite a bit. You know, I don't know all the requirements off the top of my head, but I know these you know, these containers going in and out of these terminals, they do get weighed. You know, there's some serious penalties now against shippers for misdeclared weights. Even bigger is misdeclared cargo.
I think it,
and I think you're going to see that change even more.
I think it varies from port to port. Unfortunately, in some ports it's enforced, such as Port Elizabeth, Newark in New Jersey, for sure. Containers are weighed, but I can't guarantee that's the case elsewhere.
Another question here. Does most marine insurance cover the complete costs associated with general average or only a portion of it? So the answer to that, general average and heavy weather losses, I'll put the two together. If there's damage to your cargo, following general average, following a heavy weather loss, certainly cargo insurance is going to respond. If general average demands are made and you have to pay a portion of that, any cargo insurance is going to cover that. The broader issue of delay, lost opportunity costs, if your freight is fine, but simply delayed, there's really no coverage for that. So I think those are the practical considerations that you, as a shipper, have to consider in determining, whether you're splitting shipments to get some cargo on different vessels, perhaps changing lead times to get cargo in sooner, and potentially moving away kind of from more of a just-in-time delivery schedule, because some of these expenses that are more consequential in nature are not going to be insured. Okay. And maybe one more question, and I think for the rest that we can answer offline. Take one here. What controls can be put in place technology-wise to have more corresponding information from crew and port authorities to mitigate this? I think we're in a great point in technology merging with transportation, where we do have the opportunity to let technology, help create some more transparency here. I think if shippers and steamship lines work together to try and promote that, it's not going to come without cost. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges is, making sure that everyone agrees that this visibility is good, that it will probably come at a slight added cost, but overall, I think it's going to improve the situation. Okay, so why don't we leave it there? I want to thank you all for joining us. I certainly want to thank Cindy, John, and Glenn. I want to thank Charles Taylor for lending the two of them to us today to take time out of their busy schedules. We'll have this recorded and sent off as a link to everybody in the coming days. Just a reminder to take the brief survey. You can win one of two $50 Visa gift cards, and hope you enjoyed the presentation. So Cindy, John, Glenn, thank you again for joining us. Very much appreciate your insight and your input.
Thank you very much, Rick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Rick. Rick, thank you. Cindy, thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you.